Hey there, crafty friends. It's Tina the Scrappin' Rabbit. Thanks so much for stopping by my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be creating a couple cards using some Spellbinders, Fun Stamper's Journey stamps, as well as a stencil. I just love this theme, the little bees and the florals and the leaves, the honeycomb, along with some great sentiments. And with the sweet honeycomb stencil, the possibilities are endless. So to stamp out my images, I like to heat emboss them. So I'm going to go ahead and use a powder tool over my paper so that the embossing powder won't stick all over the place. Once I get the images arranged the way that I like to stamp a ton of them at a time, and that saves me time for future projects. The ink that I like to use is the VersaFine black ink. And these red rubber stamps really stamp just beautifully. It doesn't take a lot of pressure. You just get them on there and press down, and then voila, there your images are nice and crisp and clear. I'm going to use some clear embossing powder over these images. And once I get them covered really well, I'm going to go ahead and heat my embossing, my heat gun for a few seconds to get it nice and hot. And then go ahead and melt that powder really well because I'm going to be coloring with Copics today. So as you can see, I stamped my entire sheet as many times as I could fit on my 8.5 by 11 paper. And then I'm going to go ahead and grab my Copic markers. Starting with the stems, I'm going to start with the YG67, blend that out with the YG63, and then my lightest color in this blend is the YG11. This is one of my favorite green combinations to use for leaves and greenery. I do like to add that second coat. It really gives more contrast and deepens the color, makes it nice and rich. Once I get the stems colored, I'm going to do the flower. I started off with the YR23 and went to the Y13, but realized I wanted a center color there, the Y21, to blend those two together. And then for the lightest color, I'll use the Y11. Going in there with that second layer to deepen the contrast and to deepen the color, I'm just going to follow that same pattern of those four colors, and then that will be the center of my flower. For the petals, since I want them to be white, I'm going to go to the cool grays, starting with the C0 and blend it out with the C00, and then just to kind of let that color fade into the tips of the petals, I'll blend that out using the 0, the blender. And then that gives you just a touch of color to give the appearance of being white. For a little interest, I'm going to add some dots with the E23, just adding a little texture, then the YR23, and then the Y21. And then for the bee, I'm going to use a goldish yellow, a Y26 around the edges, working my way towards the center, blending that out with the Y15, and then the Y13. And I really feel like when you go from the dark to light in the center, it gives you that contrast and gives you the illusion of depth to make those bees' body look on the rounded side. Now that I have all of my images colored, it's time to plan out my card design. I decided to go with a slimline card, and I used my Spellbinders Nestability hexagons to cut out a little hexagon trio. Then I also took the larger hexagon and ran it through my die cutting machine with the stencil to use that as an embossing folder to give it more texture. And now for the stenciling. I do like to secure the stencil as well as my background panel using a little bit of tape. And I'm going to blend out using the mustard seed just into the corner of my panel. Using the fossilized amber, I'm going to go around the edges of that to give a little bit of contrast in the color. And once I have that color laid down, I'm going to lift my stencil and add the squeezed lemonade just to blend out any of the harsh lines. Using that same technique, I'm going to flip my cardstock over to the other corner and doing the same thing, the mustard seed, the fossilized amber around the edges, and then again blending that out with the lightest color, the squeezed lemonade. Once I have that color down, I'm going to do it a couple more times, and then using the fossilized amber, I'm going to go around the edges of my panel to get rid of any of the stark white contrast. Now that I have my background panel all colored with the stencil and the distress inks, I'm now trying to figure out where I'm going to place all of the flowers and my little hexagons. I'm going for the upright slimline there and arranging the little daisies, and as you can see, when it comes together, those images really just pop on my panel. So I'm going to use some liquid glue to adhere all of my colored and stamped images onto each one of the little hexagons. I do like to use the liquid glue. It goes a lot quicker, and sometimes it can get a bit messy, but overall it's a lot easier than trying to put double-sided tape behind those slim little stamped images. I'm going to use some double-sided foam adhesive to pop up those little bees, and I'm also going to back each one of the hexagons with another layer of white cardstock just to give it a little bit more dimension so that it pops up a little bit more onto my card. Now that I have all of the images glued to the hexagons, I'm using my mat and the ruler on there to center those on there to figure out where am I going to put my sentiment. So I'm choosing the Sweet Friend sentiment, and I'm going to emboss that on there before I add the layers. And using my powder tool again and my VersaFine ink, I'm going to go ahead and stamp that the sentiment on there, and use the clear embossing powder and my heat gun to melt that, and then that is going to give me my nice rich embossed sentiment. Using liquid glue, I'm going to go ahead and adhere those hexagons, again using my mat to help me center those layers on there the best I can. And then once I have all of my little hexagons glued on to my card panel, I can go ahead and pop up those little bees. And I'm liking the way that this is turning out. I did cut out a slimline panel at 8.5 by 3.5 for my card base, and I'm going to glue that on there. I wonder if you are enjoying the slimline card craze as much as I am. I have been making lots of slimlines lately, and I really do enjoy the extra space that you have to work with, whether you're doing them upright or in the landscape position. And you can use so many of the images in your sets all on one card. Once I have my little bees adhered, I'm going to use some of these little sequins from my stash. I secured them using my art glitter glue, and adding that extra bling is something that I always like to do for added detail and for added sparkle, and it really helps to pull everything together. For the center of the sequins, I'm going to use my little Nouveau glitter there for that extra bling. And I have this sparkle marker that I'm going to take to the wings of the bees to give it that extra sparkle. And I'll also add that to the center of the flowers. And there you go. That is one card completed using the Sweet as Honey stamps. For my next card, I'm going to focus on this large floral image. Using the same technique as my previous card, I'm going to use the VersaFine ink, the clear embossing powder, and then melting that really well with a heat tool. For the colors, I'm using very similar colors, the YR23, the YR24 to blend that out, and then the E23, and the Y17 for the center of the flower. I'm trying to pick darker shades to have a little bit of a contrast when I go to the petals. The YR23 for the base of the petals, and then I'm going to blend that out with the Y21, the Y13, the Y11, and the Y00. You don't have to use this many colors for your blends. I'm always experimenting and trying to find new color combinations, and I choose a 4-color blend. I always find that that usually has a really nice transition. So as you can see, the flower is really starting to come together and then going from the deepest color on the bottom and then blending that out towards the top of each petal with the lighter colors really has that transition and that contrast to make for a beautiful petal. I find florals more challenging than the critters. I don't do them as often, but this beautiful image I really did enjoy coloring up all of these little petals, and with this yellow too to help the bees pop out more on my card. Once I have all of my petals colored, then I'll go ahead and color the leaves using the same green combination as the other images that I colored. And then now it's time to go ahead and design the card and placement for all of my images. I decided I wanted to emboss this panel using the stencil again, and I held it on my paper at a diagonal, and then I ran it through my die cutting machine, and I really like the way that that looks, and the little and the extra texture that you get doing that, and stretching your supplies in this way is something that I really enjoy doing. I'm going to go ahead and stamp my sentiment in the same way that I did the other images and sentiment. And I chose this Be Happy. I thought it was so cute and I really wanted to use it. So going with the angle of the embossed honeycombs, I went ahead and stamped that at an angle. I'm going to heat emboss it just like I did with the images and the other sentiments. And then I cut out this thin black strip of cardstock to add a little bit of a border to separate the embossed area to the area that I didn't emboss. Using some liquid glue, I'm going to go ahead and adhere that strip at that same angle, and then I'll trim it with my scissors. Now it's time for the fun part, putting all the little pieces together in the designing of the card. I'm using lots of the little leaves and the greenery to tuck around the beautiful floral image. And I do like to use the liquid glue, especially over the embossed image, or the embossed panel. And that helps to secure it down really well. I'm enjoying how this card is coming out. Again, florals aren't my forte, but this particular floral was a lot of fun to work with. I'm going to go ahead and pop up that flower using some double-sided adhesive foam tape. And I'm giving it really good coverage just in case I decide to send this through the mail. I don't want the image to bend at all on the top of my card. Once I get that down there nice and secure, I'm going to decide which bees I want to use on the card, and I'm also going to use the foam tape to pop those up as well. One bee on the top and one bee flying in there to land on that beautiful flower. I have these sequins in my stash again to add that extra bling, and I'm going to use my art glitter glue to adhere those down. It is a rainy day today, and the clouds and the sun, and in my room the lighting has been a little bit challenging. Now that I have that together, I'm going to go ahead and use the liquid glue to adhere this front panel to my card base, which is A2 size. Now that I have that adhered, I'm going to use this Nouveau glitter marker to add some sparkle to the center of the flower. And I'll brush on some of that sparkle marker onto the wings, again for even more sparkle. And that is my finished second card. I had so much fun working with the Fun Stamper's Journey Sweet as Honey stamp and stencil today, designing floral cards, something a little bit different than what I'm normally used to. I want to thank you guys again for watching, and I really hope that you liked this process of the creation of these two cards. There are links in the description box below if you are interested in any of these products. And as always, I always appreciate your thumbs up and your comments. All right, well, that is it for today. Again, thanks so much for stopping by. And until next time, happy crafting. Bye for now.